this week I wanted to talk about resentment. I'm starting to see how that resentment is one of the greatest dangers to the American marriage as anything else. I think it's right up there with pornography and infidelity. And I don't think that we approach resentment as strongly as we should. So I wanted to look at it right now. So I've been researching resentment because I think I have a lot of resentment that I need to deal with. And so here I am on the ground floor, starting to work on it within myself. So you're kind of taking a bit of a journey with me. I started looking at different YouTubes. One of the first ones I saw was from this lady right here. Her name was Heidi Priebe, and I really enjoyed her video. I've looked at several others since then, but she seemed to lay out some pretty good groundwork that I can move from. I'm also going to be leaning on a video I did about pornography because it has to deal with how our brains deal with different things and how our brains actually function. So it's going to kind of leaning in on both of those. They're there for you to watch. But what I wanted to talk about was resentment, what it is, what we can do about it, and what solutions we can do. I think there's four things we can do, and right at the very end, they'll be talking about the four things we can do to relieve ourselves and get rid of resentment. It's something we need to do. So she defines resentment as a state of being. It isn't just that anger, because anger and frustration can lead to a state of resentment. Resentment is frustration and anger, but it's a state of being that you get into and you get it back in your hind brain. I'm going to talk about how this affects your brain in a minute, but I wanted us to get a clear definition. There's nothing wrong with being angry. It's just what you do with your anger. There's nothing wrong with being frustrated, but it's what you do with this frustration. If it leads you to a state of resentment, that's a place where you don't want to go. So resentment is a state of being. It's not an emotion. It's where you go. And I wanted to talk about that. Leaning to Christians, I think that Christians also have a lot of resentment towards other people. We don't want to admit that we do. We have this nice plastic little facade, Baptist facade we wear. Everything's fine and it smiles. And how you doing today, brother? And we listen to our sermons and sing songs and all this kind of stuff and disappear. Nobody sees us for another week or until Wednesday night when we can play that game again. I think there's honest emotions that are going on, and I think there's a lot of resentment going on, and I even think sometimes we Christians have resentments against God.
Oh boy. I am shocked. Shocked. Well, not that shocked.
I'll lean into that because if you take someone, I had a pastor once say this. He said, we're all made out of the same cookie dough. This isn't any kind of transgenderism or anything, but we're all basically the same. Systemically, we're basically the same. We have the same brain kind of patterns, the same setup, the same emotions, the same hormones, just in different doing different things in different ways. And it's that we have in common. So what I'm saying is that, for example, let's say that a man decides he's going to be a virgin until he gets married. Well, there's an implied contract that he could build if he's not careful. That if I push away from this, then I'll get this beautiful girl. Women are the same way. If I put up this, then I'm going to get this guy, and we're going to have the house, and we're going to have the cars, and we're going to have the kids, and everything's going to go fine. There is a bit of a balance. If I read my Bible today, I'm better. And a kind of a wink about, hey, God, I said some prayers today, and I did this. Now, there are promises in the Bible. I will tell you that, and I do believe in those promises. I believe sometimes, though, when it gets to the nitty gritty, we kind of look into it and say, well, if I'm kind of doing this today, I'm kind of in the back expecting you to do this. And then I think there's some regrets. And I think we don't approach them because, again, of this plastic facade. Everybody's fine. Hidey ho, we're off to church. Here we go. And yet we create resentments. I think you do need to deal with some resentments we have against God. Some we have with parents, with pastors and leaders, not teaching how they want, not singing what we want, but we'll have the facade. Some of that you need to let go of. The one thing that she said that I thought was interesting was that resentment is a two-way contract, but you sign both. You sign for yourself and you sign for the other party. They don't know that you've made this contract, that if you do this, they should do that. There isn't, they have no idea of it. It's like if I get mad because my wife isn't bringing me a cup of coffee. She never brings me cups of coffee. Well, did she know she was supposed to? Does she have to bring me coffee every day? Can she do it because she wants to, not because, We do this. We set up these little bitty contracts. We set them up with God. We set them up with our church. We'll set them up with our parents and our in-laws. We'll set them up with our spouses and sometimes with our own children. And we have to be careful that we've set up this one-way things. Well, I expect you to do this. Our culture is where we get most of this from. Our culture will define marriage and define the roles within marriage. And you got to be a little more freewheeling. Sometimes things aren't going specifically the way they need to, and we need to discuss it. I can't just say, well, now you're my wife, you're supposed to do this, this, and this. Well, she goes, now you're my husband, you're supposed to do this, this, and this. We have these, again, two-sided contracts that we sign both sides. We sign for us and we sign for them, and we're holding them accountable, and they don't even know it. They don't know why you're upset over in your chair or why you're pulling back, and because we're angry or something. So we have to realize that that's what's happening. Now, I want to take a small moment to say I'm not talking about deep rooted trauma, deep rooted sexual molestation or something. I do strongly believe in mental health professionals, just like I believe in physical health professionals. I go to a physical health professional. I just don't go to the pastor and just pray. I may talk to the pastor, I might pray, but I also set up an appointment. I go to a mechanic who's a professional to deal with my car. I might deal with it to a certain level, then I need to have him take care of it. So there is a line to where you might need to seek mental help, and that's okay. If you see that, if there's certain resentments that go back to something very traumatic, then yes, get help. Get help as soon as you can. But where I wanted to say is most of the time, these resentments are stuff that we created between us and a second party, and that's what we have to deal with. I wanted to talk about front brain, and back brain because I think this is important. The lady Heidi didn't talk about this. I kind of leaned into it on my YouTube about pornography. Is that this is all in the brain, and I want to talk about front brain and back brain, and it's very important that we talk about this. It's because your front brain is where you make decisions. Your back brain, which I'll call the hind brain, or if we want to call it the animal brain, it's the autonomic. It's things that go on when you're sleeping, and it's also pre-programming that you did. You programmed your brain. Now, maybe you programmed it from a third party. You know, someone said you were ugly, and you agreed, and then you programmed your brain, I'm ugly, I'm fat, I'm a loser, you know, and we just let running back there is this, and you've got to tell your front brain to tell your back brain, no, it's okay. You're good looking. You're okay. You're smart. You can do this. Oh, okay. That's fine. I mean, imagine that your back brain is just three guys and they're back there going, okay, boss, whatever you want. You know, we're pushing the buttons and whatever you want, you know. And if you say something, it's okay. I mean, where I kind of leaned in on my video is if you tell your back brain that you want to watch pornography, they'll be like, okay, we're going to watch pornography. Okay, let's get all these chemicals going and let's get all these hormones running and we're going to get the blood flow going. Okay, and they train your brain. There's a sense of neuroplasticity that I talked about to where your brain has these neurons that connect. And if you do something for a long time, they'll create a bond. I mean, this happens with piano playing. This happens with art. This happens with football. This happens with anything. You create these strong bonds. But we do that negatively with drugs, with smoking, with porn and sex and lust. But it's you training these guys, and these guys in the back are amoral. They're going to do whatever the front guy says. And they're going to run it in the background, even if the front guy changes his mind and says, yeah, I don't want to do pornography anymore. Did you train your back brain to go, okay, we're not going to do this anymore. Okay, we're not going to do it anymore. So they start reprogramming it. But it might take a while. You've done this and you need to. And that's where the discipleship, that's where leaning in, that's where working hard. This could take days, weeks, or months, and anything if you want to lose weight. Once again, okay, boys, we're going to eat what we want. Let's go over to the kitchen. Oh, okay. Okay, boys, we're going to go and we're going to lose some weight. I mean, it's whatever your front brain says. So what I'm saying is this is autonomic software running here. And so all you have to do, and then the one thing I've noticed, because I've started dealing with some of the resentments that I've had in the past with some of my relatives and dealing with things in the marriage and dealing with things with myself, how I had high expectations of what I was going to do, and then all of a sudden I'm a failure. Okay, you're a failure. No, I'm not. Stop. You know, stop doing this. If you want to get away from resentment, You have to tell this part of the brain to tell this part of the brain what to do. One thing I've noticed, and like I said, I'm working on this process, is changing resentment is actually pretty easy. Now, I'm going to talk about in a minute the 4 things I have that are the solutions to this. But breaking a resentment, let's say that I did have resentment that I found I had with my grandmother because I didn't feel like she loved me like I wanted to be loved or thought I should be loved by a grandmother. You know, I played the good boy. I grew up with, okay, be a good boy and this will happen. Be a good boy and that'll happen. Well, I was a good boy and those things didn't happen. And to resent the fact that I spent all this time being a good boy. And it's akin to what we do with God. I'm a good boy and good things should happen to me. I should get the pretty girl and we should have the nice house and we should be, in a nice part of town, sa-tra. And it doesn't happen and there's resentment. But you can go and tear that resentment over here like a piece of paper. It's easy to tear, but then you don't attach it again. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. The 4 things you can do. But you imagine you're a mummy, you're wrapped in all this resentment, but they're all pieces of paper. You just start tearing them one at a time. Now you have to approach them one at a time, so that's when I want to go. The 4 solutions, real quick, the 4 solutions that I have. Number 1, recognize the problem. I'm borrowing this from several videos. If you don't recognize the resentment as a problem, if you're going to put up, well, I don't resent anybody. I have no resentment. Okay, thank you for playing. You can move on now. But if you do recognize the problem, now one thing I'll tell you, you want to know if you have a problem with resentment, look for these words with any of these relationships. Ought to, need to, should be, could be, you never, you always, that kind of thing. I didn't get, the word settle is a big one. Anyone who says the word settle is obviously saying I didn't get what I wanted. Look for that kind of terminology between you and another person. And what I'm going to say is these things that you're going to do are people centered. It's not going to be just a job or a school. It's going to be a grandmother or grandfather with a name, a parent with a name, an in-law with a name, a teacher with a name. So you have to take these and tear them. So number 1, recognize the problem. Number 2, do the slow fix. Again, take some time. You might do one person at a time. And like I said, this is person. It's not going to be school. It's not going to be just parents. It's going to be a person. And work out 5 or 6 on those a persons. And then start slowly tearing them. This might take a while. You might have a lot. When you get to a spouse, you might find yourself with 30 or 40 presumptions and assumptions of behavior that you put upon them or society put upon you or the religion says this is this, that is that. You've got to realize that you have to take responsibility. Do the slow fix. It's called ownership. That's the biggest problem. The biggest reason why people don't want to get rid of resentment because what's left is ownership. Now, I'm not talking about deep trauma, sexual molestation, and all of these. I'm talking about just basic, everyday resentments. That you didn't do this, that the house didn't get cleaned, that the yard didn't get mowed, or the trash doesn't never get taken down. You're always leaving socks on the floor. There's the word always. Why do you think that a man's never going to put socks on the floor? There needs to be a discussion here, and it's okay to have communication. But here you have to have ownership. I have to own that I made this contract. I made this contract, and now I have to break that contract. Now, the last one is replacement. Very important. Even with my grandmother who's passed away, I replaced it with she loved me the best she could. Now, once again, I'm not saying about deep trauma and deep child abuse or something where you may have to get a professional to help you through some of this stuff. But at the end of the day, no matter what your mental health problem is, usually it's recognize the problem, do what you can to fix it, take ownership, forgive yourself, and then replace it. That's going to be where you're going to go at the end of the day. And this is something you have to do for you. You have to be your own physician here. So those are the 4 things I'm going to talk about and say that resentment is destroying marriages. Resentment are making people not connect. And resentment also will affect your body. Like I said with your mind, your body will raise cortisol if this back part of the brain is running on something. and your cortisol is up, even though you can't feel it, even though you can't see it. You're trying to lose weight, but it can't because your cortisol is raised. Your adrenals are raised over an issue that keeps going on and on. I can't believe she doesn't want to do this. He doesn't want to do that, especially about sex. Sex is going to be a big one. When women feel resentment, they pull away from sex. And then men feel resentment because they got sex pulled away from them. And so now this just festers on. And it won't stop itself. There's no way for the third party to meet the needs of your resentment. There's too much, too many, too much water under the bridge, too much time, you know, and so it just builds up unless you take care of the resentment yourself. That person can't do enough. And these resentments pull people apart. They destroy the sex. They destroy the finances. People aren't trusting one another. They destroy your body. They destroy your mind. And it's a horrible thing that's going on. So I'm going to say resentment is a big thing. We need to look into it. We need to take care of it. Those are the 4 things you can do. So look into your life. See if you have any resentment you need to work on. You're not here to pick on your wife and show her resentment. You're only about to show yours. One thing I'll say here at the very, very close. Most of this, probably 90% of this, is something no one else needs to know about. Don't tell your wife, I resented you for this, and don't tell your husband, I resented this and I resented that. You chose to be resentful over that. You chose not to communicate. Hey, can we discuss it? All these socks on the floor. I really do not like socks. I mean, you see where I'm going. You chose not to take ownership of it. You chose to just build a contract in your mind. So don't bother calling up grandma and grandpa and mom and dad and Uncle Fred and your teachers or whoever, unless it's a specific, contract that both of you discussed. You got to work on this yourself. And I think that the peace you bring after this can be contagious. Once they feel like you're not at war with them anymore, you're not sitting over there over tense and kind of whatever, you're kind of relaxed and you're kind of enjoying. But listen to where they may have resentment against you, then there's nothing you can do about it. That's the downside. If you've got a wife or a husband that says you ought to do this, you ought to do that, you never do this, you can't do anything about it. You can't really even point it out, except generally. But go ahead and do this for your own sake, for your own health, for your own mental, and for your own spiritual. So let's start attacking resentment. Let's start breaking those paper chains, and let's start moving on and replace it with good things.